Baker dropped back to pass. Down the middle. Touchdown.
Simonson on his way into the end zone. Quiz up the middle. Turns the legs. He's in. Blows to the back. He's got Wheaton on the crossing route. Touchdown, Beavers!
The Beavers have won their 4th in a row. Coming up on the show, a very busy one, a visit with the man of the hour. In fact, both of them, Sean Mannion and Brandin Cooks, another great display by those two and the entire Oregon State team. And we welcome in Tim Ewis, former Oregon State great and NFL player, and Angie Machado, the publisher of Beaver Blitz, as we react to first, before we hear from Mannion and Cooks and others as we go. The most impressive thing, Timmy, for you, for the Beavers beating Colorado 44-17 to go to 2-0 in the Pac-12, 4-1. What jumped out at you the most about that game?
Well, going 2-0 is huge, Mike, first off. But number one, 6 touchdowns by Sean Manion. I call him Touchdown Shawnee. And
well, if you do, so will I.
6 tugs, 27 for 52. Huge day, and that's really what set the tone.
A record-setting day for Sean Mannion on a day, quite frankly, and we'll talk to him about this later, where I thought, dealing with the elements, some drop passes by his receivers who also were dealing with the elements, Angie. Mannion has a record-setting day on a day where he really wasn't as sharp as he usually is, but still sets a record. That says a lot about Sean Mannion. What about you in that game Saturday?
Brandin Cooks. I mean, Cookie, as you like to call him. I mean, he was amazing. I mean, that play where he went up in double coverage and came down with the ball, he had a couple of those catches. So after kind of struggling a little bit, I think, at San Diego State, comes back with a huge, huge game.
And we had a chance to talk to head coach Mike Riley. In fact, when we talk about Mannion and Cooks, that combination has been as good as there is in the country and perhaps in the history of Oregon State football. Coach Riley was asked, did he expect that kind of dynamic production from that duo?
They've done well. That's for sure. Brandin in particular last week bailed us out. Some great catches. We were kind of sloppy offensively, and I thought he made some plays that really ignited us. And he's a good player.
Well, Sean Mannion in his record-setting day and throughout the season, Tim, has found a lot of different targets. But on Saturday against Colorado, for the first time in Caleb Smith's career, a 2-touchdown game. But that's coming pretty early in his Oregon State career.
Coming very early in his career. I mean, it took me till my last home game as a senior in Reeser against Stanford to have a 2-touchdown game. And the beautiful thing is there's so many weapons there. And I'll keep going back to Angie's point at the beginning of this season. Sean Mannion's decision-making was what was going to be the difference maker this year, and he spread the ball out all over the field. Tight ends, wideouts, running backs, any possible receiver out there, Caleb gets 2. It's just the way the defense was played. It's not like Sean was looking for him. It was what he was given. And the beautiful thing about what Caleb did, he was catching little banana routes over the middle. It was taking 2 or 3 guys to bring him down. He was also catching the ball in the red zone. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns. We'll highlight one of them later in the play breakdown, Mike.
And among those 6, Teron Ward, for the 2nd straight week, catches a touchdown pass and a dazzling play. And Teron Ward putting a great show on for the fans. Angie, the productivity in these 6 touchdowns, I know it's not lost upon you in your recruiting expertise that in this case, stars are making plays and have stars behind their name.
Yeah, Beaver fans want to say stars never matter in recruiting, and Coach Riley and his staff do an excellent job of evaluating talent, but the stars do come in as playmakers. I mean, you look at the 4 playmakers on offense right now, the 4 stars, Isaac Seumalo, Sean Mannion, Caleb Smith, and Brandin Cooks. So, 4 of those 6 touchdowns came at the hands of some 4-star recruits.
In terms of stars, I thought the Beaver defense did a great job of shutting down Colorado's star. But what about stars and the number?
Well, they did a great job of shutting down the 4-star receiver. They tried to get him the ball every way they could on reverses, handing him the ball, short passes, long passes. Same thing we do with Brandin Cooks. They tried to utilize those same athletic skills. But on the stars, Coach Riley's always said, we want a guy to have more stars going out than he had coming in. Right. And what Oregon State does a great job of is taking the 4-star guys you just mentioned, Angie, and making sure they're still 4-star guys coming out. And that's the big difference to me. There's a lot of programs that'll take a lot of 4-star guys, and by the time they're coming out, Mike, they're a 1-star guy. And Oregon State takes a lot of pride in having 4 stars in, 4 stars out, if that's who they're getting.
And there were playmakers, you know, back to Rashad and the defense for a moment, Tim. It was the best 4 quarters of defense. Now, 123 yards of total offense through 3 quarters when the game was in the balance.
And those extra yards, they drive both of us nuts. They drive the coaches nuts. It's part of the game at that point. But a guy like Tyreek Zimmerman really stepped up and played his best football that he's played this year. 7 tackles, the big sack on the blitz, 16-yarder. Those types of plays are what he needs to make all year. And I think what Beaver Nation was expecting for a guy that played a lot last year.
And Angie, they released the Crichton. He was unblockable at times, and Dylan Wynn had a good game, too.
Yeah, I mean, the defense as a whole just played a very solid game, except for the end of the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, I think they were thinking warm shower and victory wings.
I can't really blame them for that. I think a lot of Beaver Nation was probably thinking along those same lines. A great win for Oregon State, a complete victory as they win their 4th in a row. Coming up later on Talkin Beavers, the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week, record-setting quarterback Sean Mannion. But next, Timmy breaks down the Beavers' victory against the Buffalo. Now it's time for our standard TV and appliance rewind, where we look back when we talk about dynamic duos at Oregon State, as we have with Manion and Cooks. How about the 2 receivers in the 2000 season, Chad Johnson, TJ Hushmanzada, and their numbers from that incredible Fiesta Bowl year. Tim, it was a real pleasure to have TJ Hushmanzada back in town this past weekend for the first time since he left after that 2000 campaign. I had a chance to talk to him during the radio broadcast. I know you caught up with him, too.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun talking with him. It's always fun catching up with your old teammates, kind of reliving some of the old war stories and memories. And, you know, TJ and Chad combined for 177 yards in that Fiesta Bowl, 167, I guess, 2 touchdowns. Of course, TJ had the one where he rolled off the defender and scampered in the end zone. Chad has the long one. He drops the ball early. 2 great receivers and a great part of Oregon State history. It was awesome to welcome him back last weekend.
And TJ was very impressed with what he saw coming back to his alma mater. It was a real pleasure to see TJ back in town. Now, it was also a pleasure to see the Beaver defenses we've already talked about, Tim, at work for 4 quarters. It wasn't all good. No football game is all good. But early, there was some great work up front.
There really was. And what we want to highlight today is their job in the run game. And we've always talked about those one-on-one matchups, Mike, and how those are established in that spread offense. And so we're going to look at a couple of those today. And we're going to start out with, you know, here in the first quarter, 1st and 10, run down for Colorado. Dylan Wynn playing nose tackle, Mike, at 240 pounds, you know, taking on the double team. Devin Kell outside. And Kell, we kind of got on a little bit against Utah for not taking on that H blocker. Look at him right there. Takes on the H blocker, stuffs up the hole, the backers fill, almost no gain. And when you put somebody in 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, Mike, that is just huge. It limits their playbook on offense, definitely.
Yeah, and they did a great job, Tim, as we've already talked about, through the balance of the game, through 3 quarters. But in the midst of a game, there's always things to learn. And during the bye week, you know, guys continue to try to get better at a variety of things. And so there was a play that did kind of get away from them, too, on defense.
Yeah, in all fairness, we want to look at this next snap. And it's a great play to look at. You know, the 2 linebackers are responsible in this zone read for the quarterback and the running back. And they got the running back coming across in the zone read. Everybody else fills their gap. Once again, a one-on-one matchup right there, and that's exactly what we want. And the linebacker just doesn't make the play. And that's tough, and it's tough for Beaver Nation to watch, but there's a reason. The other guy is getting paid a scholarship as well, Mike, and it's a man-on-man matchup, and that's all we can ask for. The players were in the right place. The scheme was right. We just have to make that play. And those guys are getting better every week. And I guess Beaver Nation can be thankful that at least he was there to make a play.
Well, that's true. And even, you know, the zone read play, as we saw later that night with USC struggling to deal with that and a lot of other teams struggling to make that play, at least the Beavers were in the right position. And DJ Alexander will make that tackle almost every other time.
I believe he will too. But we just, out of fairness, we wanted to highlight it and look at it because he is in the right spot, and now it's on him to make the play. And the majority of that game, he made it, Mike.
But that's an improvement over earlier in the year.
The back is not running free, untouched.
Yeah.
In very little room for Colorado to operate. Now, offensively, Tim, you've got some plays that we're going to look at. We love when you break these things down. This is your your bailiwick because you caught plays like we're about to see. You've already touched on Caleb Smith's emergence. What about this play?
Yeah, so this is a beautiful goal line play here, Mike. Third down and goal. You got to get it in the end zone. And what we want to look at, heavy set. They've run out of this with 3 backs to a side, a fullback, tight end, and running back. Connor Hamlet. He's going to run kind of a little in and take all those defenders with him. He's been such a presence in the red zone. Caleb Smith there with the orange circle. Little pass pro and releases. We used to call it the old 84 Y delay with Coach Erickson. And when we got that thing called, just kind of double count that guy up the field on a pass block and release, and you knew it was going to be a good play. The 84. And that's why, I don't know, that's why they call it 84 Y delay. But you kind of saw those backers move out of the corner of your eye, and Caleb saw the same thing. Easy pitch and catch, Mike.
It was impressive, and that was Caleb Smith's first of 2 touchdowns on the day. Now, the other play that you've dialed up for us, and I like it because it wasn't one of the other touchdown passes, and Sean Mannion, who will join us later on the show, had 6 to set a record. But it was a play that showed that Cookie, as we love to call him, yes, he demands a lot of attention, but the other playmakers do too.
Yeah, and that's why I picked this one, because there were so many highlights in the game. But here we got Richard Mullaney and Cookie split out. 3 defenders guarding 2 right here, Mike. It's not great numbers, but we know we can complete a pass out there. Good pass protection. Sean takes his drop. Look at what happens. 2 defenders run with Mullaney on the deep route because he has caught several of those balls. Cooks makes a one-on-one play on the outside, gets that yards after catch. He gets that yak, eats it up. Now watch Richard at the end of this thing blocking. As soon as he sees that play, he turns around, spins, and is still blocking a defender when Cooks runs out of bounds and avoids that hit.
I have a question for you. I mean, does Colorado make a choice, even if it's 3-on-2, as you said? Do they have to make a choice and something's going to be open, and that's part of what Sean reads?
One of my favorite quotes all time from Oregon State football is, "They can't be right." And for that coverage, we had the right play called. The defenders couldn't be right. There was going to be a one-on-one matchup somewhere on the 3-on-2, and Sean read it well, took the one-on-one to Cooks. And that's an instance where, again, usually you think they're going to double team Brandin, but they take Mullaney, and Sean makes the easy read. He's not just singling out a guy.
And this is why even without a run game, this is why the passing game is working, because there are so many weapons with the tight ends and the receivers.
And the protection has been great with a dinged-up O-line. And we can only see that getting Woods back, getting those O-linemen back, and they should be back for this Washington State game. Man, that's where we're going to really see dividends from all these young guys playing the depth that they've developed.
Later on Talkin Beavers, we hear from Storm Woods and Brandin Cooks in our feature entitled Run and Catch. It's time now for us to determine who gets this week's Wilson Motors game balls. And Timmy, we start with you. Nice catch, by the way.
Always, Mike.
I know.
Game ball. At the beginning of the season, there was a quarterback controversy that I remember, and I blogged about it on Tuesday. And a guy that I am now calling Touchdown Shawnee won that controversy or competition. 21 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2,000 yards in the first 5 games of the season, 414 last weekend, 27 completions, 6 touchdowns, broke Derek Anderson's record. Touchdown Shawnee gets my game ball.
Yeah, and again, I say touchdown Shawnee, even on a day, Angie, where I thought he was affected somewhat by the elements. He wouldn't be a human being if he wasn't. There were some drops. One of the interceptions came off a drop pass. But a guy that didn't drop him too many, I think I know where you're going with this.
I'm going to go with Brandin Cooks. We're going with Shawnee and Cookie here. Brandin Cooks had a marvelous game. I mean, he wins it almost every week now, but just a huge game. He picked it up. Those 2 catches, I mean, he basically saved 2 potential interceptions.
Well, not only did he get it done in the air, he got it done on the ground, and
exactly,
was a big part of the Beavers' run game on the fly sweep. There was a reemergence of that. Yeah. I think almost 50 yards this week on the ground.
So my game ball is Brandin Cooks.
Fabulous game for Brandin and obviously for Sean, and they connected 2 more times. But to win the game, as we talked about earlier, the Beavers had to have a shutdown defensive performance, and they did. And they shut down the guy that came in averaging 208.5 yards per game in Paul Richardson. Rashad Reynolds was a big part of that. Rashad had an athletic interception diving on the sideline, and he was part of a unit that held Richardson essentially to nothing in the balance of the game. And in fact, Paul caught a couple of cheapies late, a one-hopper that they gave him credit for, and a touchdown reception where he stepped out of bounds and came back in. I was so upset about the non-call there that the numbers were great for the Beavers secondary, led by Rashad Reynolds, who gets my Wilson Motors game ball.
You were so upset after the game when I saw you about that play and the cheap yards. But to your point on Shad getting a game ball, it's the first one you've given him this year.
Yeah.
You know, so often in the NFL and college football, the number one corner is put on the number one wideout. And he's done a great job this year taking that role. And people have tried to attack Nelson because he's kind of taken the number two receiver. And Nelson's come up with all these huge plays so far. And Shad has kind of been out of the limelight. This was his chance. You knew they were going to continue to go with their number one receiver. And he had the draw to guard him the majority of the game and did a fantastic job.
No, it was one of Rashad's finest hours amongst many at Oregon State. Tim, you've had the opportunity to visit with Coach Riley on a number of things, and I've just been so impressed with the conversations that you've had, and the latest is your conversation with Coach Riley and the influence of the legendary coach at Alabama, Bear Bryant, amongst other things.
Being at Alabama under Coach Bryant was good for me.
You went there for a reason, to play for him and have that opportunity. So
yeah.
What did you learn? What are takeaways from
Well, I learned there's no substitute for hard work. We were going to work hard. And I learned about what pride in a program meant. I mean, that everybody there was really, really proud to be a part of Alabama football. And it started with the leader in Coach Bryant, and it just went all the way down through the state. And that is if you weren't for Auburn. But it was that was pretty special. The other thing that I look back and appreciate probably as much as anything is that, you know, I was one of 120 guys on the team and not a great player on that team, but I was always treated fairly. I was always made to feel a part. I was always respected in that regard. I hope I always keep that as a constant reminder about our team in total, because I want that guy that is me on our team, I want him to feel like I got to feel being a part of Alabama's team. So I took away a lot from the University of Alabama playing for Coach Bryant.
So obviously your fall camp there was probably a little more intense than fall camp is now, and the 3-hour practices and all of that grind of two-a-days. How's that evolved for you coaching over time?
Well, it was a different world back then, and even as young as you are, even in your world, it's different today. I don't think that there were any rules at all about how long you could practice. I mean, if there were, we were breaking them. we were out there a long time, and today I think it's smarter. Today I think that these rules are in place for good reasons. I think we'll continue to see changes. I really like, for our own benefit, I think I'd do this even if it wasn't a rule, where you alternate 2-a-day practices with a 1-a-day, and then go back to 2-a-day, because simply it allows you more time between each practice to both watch the previous practice film and prepare for the next practice.
Coach Mike Riley talking about his legendary coach in college in Bear Bryant. And Angie, it's just a pleasure to hear Coach Riley talk about the influence that other coaches have had. He talks of Ad Rutschman and Bear and his late father. The stability, the integrity, the credibility that Coach Riley brings to the job at Oregon State, off the charts good. And so Mike's name comes up in conjunction with the USC opening, with Lane Kiffin fired this week, but Mike's happy here.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, today in his conference call, it was tweeted about by friend Ted Miller, said that he has no, he's scratching and clawing to, get a job done here, and he's, not interested. And everybody comes calling, and I think that's something that recruits have to look at is, Oregon State maybe is not thought of as the sexiest program out there. Coach Riley maybe isn't the flashy, but the stability that they bring, that family atmosphere, we've talked about it before, it's not just talk. It's not lip service. It's something true here.
Yeah, you know, Angie, I wrote about it on my blog this week as well on CSNNW, that there's something about a coach that leaves and then has a chance to come back and answers that question for recruits a totally different way on what if the NFL keeps calling, or what if USC keeps calling. And there's two different answers Coach has given me in my time that I've known him, and that's one of my discussions this week on my blog. And he's not going anywhere, I'll promise you that.
Well, the Beavers still have to play USC. Now Kiffin-less. Ed Orgeron, an outstanding recruiter and football guy, will be the interim coach. I think it is an interesting discussion to see which direction USC will go. I hear names such as Kevin Sumlin and Chris Peterson, James Franklin. Pat Hayden has a big choice, a big decision, a very important one. I think he'll find a very good guy. Jack Del Rio, Jeff Fisher. There's a lot of candidates who will be interested in that job, Tim.
That's a huge job and a huge hire. And there's a certain, as you said, sexiness and flashiness that comes with that job. And Pete Carroll really embraced that and learned how to use the media. And I'm not sure Lane Kiffin did. I think that was one of his downfalls there, understanding how to use Hollywood to his benefit.
Use that, and then deal with the boosters. You know, it's not, you have 200 boosters that are emailing you after a loss. Big boosters, not just your, $100 here and there. It's a totally different ballgame down there.
In the meantime, it'll be very interesting to see when the Trojans come to town. They won't have Lane, but I think the Beavers were ready to play a good football game, and will be, no matter who comes in leading the Trojans to Reser Stadium. Coming up later, we hear what superpowers Storm Woods and Brandin Cooks wish they had. But next, we sit down with Beavers quarterback Sean Mannion. Already on the show, we've looked back at the Beavers' big win over Colorado. Some of the top plays in that game broken down by the estimable Tim Ewis. We've heard about the USC situation, talked a little bit about that. And we're looking ahead. We're going to hear from Brandin Cooks on what was a remarkable game for the Beavers wide receiver. But the guy throwing him the football, again, in remarkable fashion, and for his 6th touchdown game, named the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week. 6 touchdown passes, a single game Oregon State record, and we are honored to be joined by quarterback Sean Mannion. Sean, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Congratulations on the 6 touchdowns. Those came as the game flowed along. It struck me, Sean, that early with the elements, with some drops and maybe even some misfires on your part, that game got off to a little bit of a rough start. You managed to weather the weather, though. But tell us about early on some of the things that were going on.
I think it was a sloppy start for us, like you said. Way too many 3-and-outs for us in the first half. But I like the way we kind of persevered and kind of kept trying to execute and kind of hit a rhythm, start of the second half.
How tough was it throwing in those conditions, Sean, early?
It's something I really just try not to think about. Luckily for us, it wasn't too bad.
Did you watch later in the night?
I did watch later. That was a whole different story. But usually they do a pretty good job keeping the balls dry. I think the umpire has a towel. Usually they're cycling a new ball every play.
And what do you do personally to prepare? I know they used to do like the 5-gallon bucket of water and douse the balls before practice. What's your kind of secret so it's not playing a mind game when you're out there?
I've never done that. I've never, I wouldn't say I've really done anything that specific. I'd say it's just kind of over the years, especially practicing in Oregon. You get your fair share of rain, so I guess you kind of get a little more used to it. I think it's important not to grip the ball too hard. I think when you try to really squeeze all the air out of the ball is when it starts to slip.
So let me ask you this. Up in Oregon now, your dad came up here with you as well as a coach at Silverton High School. I coach against him. He's a heck of a ball coach. You grew up under him your whole life. What did you learn from him that kind of took you to that next level?
I think, above all else, I think it was just kind of the exposure to the sport. Getting to go hang out with my dad at practice and, when I was really young, not really knowing much about it, but kind of getting to experience it through him. And then as I grew up, obviously he was a great help to me. Even things as simple as playing catch in the front yard, he kind of coached me up on my release and all that stuff. But I'd say above all else, it was kind of instilling my passion for the sport was really what kind of the best thing he could have given me.
And you truly are a gym rat. I remember our first conversation you asked me the quarterbacks that I had played with, and I said Jonathan Smith and Derek Anderson, and your answer was the two most prolific quarterbacks at Oregon State. And at that moment, I knew you were kind of like me and a history buff and wanted to understand the program you were playing for, the roots of it, the very good quarterback history here. You know, you had that vision that you could be one of those guys. You're at 21 touchdowns and 2 picks. And I talked with Derek after the game Saturday, and he even said that's a heck of a mark that you should be extremely proud of. What have Coach Riley and Coach Langsdorff taught you to bring you to that point?
You know, just so much. You know, I think when I came here, I just tried to be a sponge and just try to soak up anything they were willing to teach me, and you know, ask a lot of questions. Hopefully I didn't annoy them at all, but just try to learn as much as I could. And you know, I think specifically, I think they really emphasized accuracy. I think, you know, coming out of high school, you can kind of get away with a few more throws, and I think they really stressed to me that accuracy is what's going to kind of take you to succeed. And you know, I think that's something that they really emphasized, and I just tried to continue to learn, and you know, and luckily they kept on teaching me. So
accuracy is the key for touchdown, Shawnee.
Wasn't that my key when we started? That was my key. So Sean, talk to us a little bit. You know, I do cover recruiting. We talk about it a lot on the show. You committed to Oregon State very early. It was in the summertime before your senior year. How much did it play into your decision-making to play for Coach Riley, someone that, you know, the longevity and being at a program with the same coach through your whole career?
Right. That was really important to me. You know, one thing that, you know, that my dad had told me, you know, going into the recruiting process is every place is going to have cool stuff, but it's the people in the program that is what's going to set one apart. And that's something that I definitely realized when I came here. A great staff all across the board. Obviously, Coach Riley being the head coach, the stability that was there was something that I thought was really, really great. You know, and I think it's the kind of thing where, you know, it felt right at the time, and you know, I had thought about the schools that had been recruiting me, and you know, Oregon State had been my favorite. So when they offered that, there was nothing else to think about.
Now, we've talked on the show tonight, Sean, about the distribution and how you're picking out different guys, and you had 6 touchdown passes, and you had 2 to Caleb Smith, 2 to Brandin Cooks, 1 to Connor Hamlet, 1 to Teron Ward. So from your standpoint, tell us, as the quarterback on this team, what the options and the resources that you have at your disposal.
Well, there's a lot of them. You know, obviously Brandin is kind of the top guy, obviously a really explosive athlete. I think Richard complements him really well, a great route runner, really good at getting off of press, which is important because he usually plays to the boundary. Kevin's a real smart player, great in the slot where there's a lot of kind of reads and adjustments. I think you could say the same about all of our tight ends. Obviously Connor and Caleb are both, you know, very, very good blockers, but also very good at receiving. Both really big bodies who go up and play the ball well in the air. And then I think all of our backs are versatile. I think Storm and Teron have both proved themselves to be capable in the receiving game, as well as good runners.
Every good quarterback I've ever been around likes to go out and swing the sticks. I know you like to swing them a little bit. He's talking about all his weapons there like they're a different club in the bag. I love it. You know exactly what they do. You know how to utilize them. You know what they're good at. You know what they're not as good at. And a big thing that stuck out to me this year, an improvement, is the screen game. Was there extra emphasis put on that in the offseason with the blocking to the back's path or the tight end's path to your read? Where was the extra emphasis for you?
Well, I think our screens are something that, you know, have kind of become I wouldn't say a staple, but definitely something we want to be able to run every game.
It's almost become the run game to me,
yeah.
to stop that rush.
Yeah, that's a real good point. You know, it's basically an extended handoff. I think it really started 2 years ago. You know, we kind of really struggled in our screen game. You know, last year I think we made a lot of good strides. And I think this year we've just continued to get better and better at it. I think one thing that was really emphasized is just get the play started. Once you have linemen going downfield, you know, everyone's kind of looking for a certain guy to block. And I think one thing that our coaches did a great job of was just simplifying it for the offensive line. Whoever gets out first, just get the play started, block someone, and then the people who get out behind you will adjust off of you.
Speaking of the offensive line, they've been dinged up. There's guys that have been in and out. How much pizza have you bought for these guys this year? I mean, they're keeping the defenders off of you at a remarkable rate.
No, absolutely right. You know, I think if I bought them pizza weekly, I'd go broke pretty fast. So usually I treat them all to Applebee's at the end of the year. But they've been outstanding. I think, you know, obviously guys have been banged up. I think there's a lot of versatility there. Isaac's obviously been moving around. Josh came in and played great at center. Grant Bay stepped in as well. Grant moved to tackle for a period of time. So a lot of different guys playing, you know, spots that they might have not have been used to at the beginning of the season. But I think what they really deserve a lot of credit for is the amount of studying they put in. I think that's a really intellectual position that they don't really get, I think, the credit they deserve at that. They spend a lot of time studying, and I think it's a part of the job that really gets overlooked.
Studying and knowing they're going to get Applebee's.
There you go.
Yeah,
Applebee's.
I would be remiss, Sean, if we're going to hear from Brandin Cooks a little bit later. What you and Brandin are doing together in terms of that sense and your trust and the mutual trust, but your trust in him. The catch that you threw into double coverage that he adjusted to and caught. Tell us a little bit about what you see in a play like that and what Cookie does to make that happen.
Well, on that play in particular, pre-snap, I thought we were going to have a pretty good look toward him. I kind of had to step up in the pocket, probably lost my eyes for a little bit on it. And then I just saw him running with two guys with their back turned, and I just tried to give it a ride. You know, just try to throw it way out there. And I think with Brandin, what's so great about him is even if he may look covered, if a guy has his back turned, or if they're kind of, you know, if they're even, he's so good at playing the ball that you feel comfortable giving him those chances. So I think on that play in particular, I saw two guys running with him with their back turned. So I thought if I give him a chance at the ball, he can come down with it.
Well, Sean, it has been just a joy to watch, but there's a long way to go here, right? I mean, you guys are just getting started in a sense, and you know a lot of challenges are ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Long season, bye week this week, but using it to get really sharp for the rest of the way.
Last year you went fishing with your O-lineman. Any plans for this weekend? Just rest?
Not really. I'll probably have them over to watch some football. Rare we get to actually watch the games. Usually we're busy all day.
Sean, thanks for joining us, and keep up the great work. Sean Mannion joining us here on Talkin Beavers. Later on Talkin Beavers, we sit down with Storm Woods and Brandin Cooks in our feature titled Run and Catch. We roll on Talkin Beavers from Flattail Brewing in downtown Corvallis. It's time now for our Taco Bell Top 5 as we look at the top 5 catches for Brandin Cooks against Colorado. The deep angle route well blocked by Richard Mullaney, who took 2 defenders, a play Timmy broke down earlier.
Yeah, here's Brandin coming across on the crossing route. Again, Sean puts the ball exactly where it needs to be, where only Brandin can get it.
And the first of 2 touchdown passes for Cookie right here.
Right here.
Look at the window.
Again, right in the middle of 2 defenders. He really trusts Brandin. You can see
How about this one? I mean, this is the one where he body control, comes down with it, and gets shoved right into the tartan goalpost. Gets his foot in.
Touchdown.
Good for college. NFL, we're going to have to get 2.
Now, this play here, I'm still kind of rubbing my eyes about that. I really see this. Mannion makes a throw, trusting Brandin Cooks in that double coverage. Cookie goes up to get it. To me, one of the great plays I've ever seen. And I had a chance to talk to Brandin Cooks on a number of subjects, and we'll get into the bye week and other things. But a little bit later, I feel as though my whole life was justified, because on the radio after that last catch, I said, that's the best catch Brandin has ever made. And, well, let's hear Brandin talk about that and other things, my conversation with Cookie. Brandin, tell me a little bit from your perspective about the bye and the timing of it for this team this year. It strikes me as coming at a good time. How do you view that?
No, this is probably the perfect time to have a bye week. You know, we have 5 games under our belt. You know, you got some nicks and bruises, a couple guys beat up. So, you know, to have a bye this week is giving us, our guys, the opportunity to be able to come back fresh for the next week. So, you know, for myself, this is definitely a perfect week. You know, I'm kind of sore and, you know, a little tight in some areas. So it came around perfect timing. You know, rather than last year, where it was like week 2, and then we had about, 10 straight games. So, you know, it's perfect timing right now.
You're coming off an amazing game, I thought, against Colorado, all things considered, with the wind conditions and the things that you all had to deal with. What was it like to be on the field and make plays in the passing game with Sean in those conditions?
You know, it just showed us that, you know, we don't find excuses for ourselves. You know, there was a lot of wind. You know, once we had changed field position after that first quarter, we had to adjust some things and get acclimated to the wind blowing different ways. And, you know, Sean did a good job of getting the ball there. And, you know, I feel like the receivers, we did a pretty good job on, you know, finding the ball in those type of conditions.
Speaking of finding the ball, there was a play that their head coach, Mike McIntyre, ended up grousing about. He said, we had two guys there. We should have made the pick. And we had that guy covered. He didn't mention you by name, but he should have, because the guy was you. Tell me, you remember the play, I think, that I'm talking about. There was a long pass that Sean threw, and you're double covered, and you went and got it. I think that's one of the best catches you've ever made. Tell me what you remember on that. What about, was it your best?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was my best catch so far. But first of all, let's start off with Sean trusting me. You know, it was late in the route, and he still let the ball go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy! If he trusts me, I have to make this play for him somehow. And then so I did a center field turn because the ball was, you know, turned me around. And then I lost it for a little bit. And then once it came down, I just, you know, just went up there strong. And you know, the guy actually made a swipe at the ball, so it just took extra focus. And I don't know how I came up with it, but it happened. And I guess that was just one of those drills that we do through our practice this offseason, stuff like that, distraction drills. So.
And Brandin, that's what I'm saying, is that that wasn't just I'm going to throw it up there and hope that something good happens. That was the function, and you put it in things you practice on, you put in the game. It's not an accident.
No, not at all. And you know, it takes a lot of guts from Sean to do that. You know, we have such things as check downs, and I guess he didn't want to go to that check down. He was feeling it, and I mean, he threw a far ball, high ball. So it was some things we practiced, and we didn't let that get away from us.
I'm glad that Brandin and I agree on the greatest catch of his career. That made me feel a little bit better. But Angie, not only catching, but running the football.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had his best day running the fly sweep, 48 yards rushing. That's going to just open up the doors, like we've talked about, down the road for the Beavers.
You know, that we showed those 5 catches. That was only 10% of his catches on the season so far. 5 games in, 52 catches, 807 yards, 9 touchdowns.
What did he have last year?
Those numbers are unreal.
67 catches last year and 5 touchdowns.
For the whole year.
It's an incredible year that Brandin Cooks is having, and it's a pleasure to watch him perform. Later on Talkin Beavers, we look ahead and preview the rest of the Beavers schedule. But next, we hear from Storm Woods and Brandin Cooks in our feature titled Run and Catch. For more Beaver coverage and outstanding college football coverage throughout the Northwest, be sure to join us on Comcast Sportsnet for Game Day at 9 in the morning on Saturdays and post-game live at 10:30 p.m. We have been treated to outstanding catching by Brandin Cooks in this 2013 season. Not as much running yet by Storm Woods. We'll have an update on Storm and his situation heading into the bye week. But Storm and Brandin have been entertaining us all season long with run and catch.
What's a superpower you wish you had?
I wish I could fly. You know,
that's lame. That's so cliche.
I just want to fly because
everyone says that.
Can you just listen?
Say something different.
Can you just listen to me? I wouldn't have to pay for plane tickets. I'd just fly home whenever I wanted after practice. You know, just something like that. What would be your superhero power?
Obviously, I would like to just be able to disappear and be able to land where I want. That's better than flying. I don't have to fly.
So teleporting.
It's not cliche. Yeah, teleporting.
Okay.
Favorite celebration meal?
Obviously, the victory wings. I mean, after every game, Raul does his job, hooks up the wings, and the team loves them.
I like it. Nah, my favorite one, obviously, that's a great one. But when we get home, when you cook, what you cook, those little, you make these little brownies. You be in there baking. I don't know. Why'd you start doing that?
It's a secret. They're not supposed to know I bake, bro.
Yeah, that's probably one of your hidden talents. You can bake.
Two outstanding young men, and we've certainly seen a lot of Brandin Cooks. The good news on the field, we're expecting to see Storm Woods back when the Beavers go to the Palouse against Washington State. The bye week coming at a very good time for Storm. He'll be ready to go and contribute on the Palouse. The bye week coming at a good time, too, Angie, for the backup quarterback.
Cody Vaz was lifting weights yesterday, dropped a 85-pound dumbbell on his foot. It is not broken. X-rays came back negative today.
Well, he'll use the bye week to heal up. And, Tim, on the offensive line, the Beavers should have some help going to Pullman.
I don't think any of them have dropped a weight on their foot. It would probably be more than 85 pounds, but they will shore up the offensive line. Hopefully, Grant Inger will return to that guard position. Gavin Andrews was practicing this week. Josh Mitchell probably has a chance to return as well. So now you go from having 5 O-linemen to having 7 or 8 O-linemen that can play in a game at any given time because they've practiced over the weeks. Bringing Storm back, Ward's done a great job.
Well, Tyler Anderson should be back as well.
Right. Tyler Anderson, the lead blocker, they have been missing his skills. So I look forward to that run game really getting shored up with the return of the O-lineman, with Storm Woods from his concussion, Ward picking up where he left off after last week in the screen and run game. I'm looking for a lot of yards to be piled up in 2 weeks.
Coming up next on Talkin Beavers, we look ahead to the rest of the challenging Beavers Pac-12 schedule. We take a look at the Beavers 2013 schedule. The Beavs at 4-1, but Tim, we can see there's a lot of challenges ahead. It was very interesting after the Beavers win over Colorado to go home and watch Stanford putting up 55 on the Beavers' next opponent, which is a much improved team this year in Washington State. Arizona State scores 62 against USC and their proud defense. There's a lot of challenges ahead for the Beavers on this schedule.
We always knew that it was backloaded, Mike. And what I look at, we're 4-1 after 5 games, and that's what matters. Now we're going to be healthy going into that meat and potatoes portion of the schedule.
And while the Beavers have a bye this week, Angie, it's a very important week. The Beavers may not be playing on the field, but this is a big weekend for the program.
It's a huge weekend for the coaches. They will be hitting the road Thursday to hit the road Texas, Arizona, Hawaii, Oklahoma, California to check out the prospects they've already had committed, and then also other prospects for 2014, 15, and 16 even.
These are exciting times for the program, and to see just what the Beavers have ahead. Washington State is next, and Tim, even though they ended up getting beaten soundly by Stanford, next up the Cougs. That front 7 and those defensive linemen are very good at stuffing the run games. You say the Beavers are going to get it ramped up, but they'll have a good challenge against the Cougs.
It'll be tough. There's no doubt about it, Mike. And always traveling up to the Palouse adds an extra little bit of toughness to that game. It seems like we always do a lot better playing them at home, and I always struggled up there with my teams. I hope that the Sean Mannion-led team just goes up and dominates.
It's a night game, and Washington State is one of the top pass defenses in the country right now.
Yeah, so for the Beavers to come out of it with a 5th straight win and 3-0 in the Pac-12, they're going to need to ramp up their run game, protect Sean Mannion, and see if Sean and Brandin and everybody can continue to do their thing. Whatever the case, we're going to be back again next week for a further preview of Washington State. Again, we thank you for joining us here at Flat Tail Brewing, and every week we'll do it again. See you next time on Talkin Beavers. So long, everybody.